All right. Well, welcome to Warrior Networking Mastermind with this week's guest, Sallie Wagner. Build your success with MSG. If we're going to achieve the impact we desire in 2023, we need to ensure we have the right mindset, the right skill set, and then get off our assets. During this fun and inspiring mastermind, we will focus on these steps to getting what we want to see in 2023. Hey, it almost rhymes. Sallie Wagner is a speaker, author, lawyer, watch what you say, guys and gals, real estate broker, an instructor, and life coach, life alchemist. And we'll hear more about that in a bit. Sallie incorporates outcome based techniques such as EFT, emotional freedom techniques, NLP, Neurolinguistic Program, and trauma aware modalities. So you'll see concrete results as you ditch those unwanted behaviors and habits, fears, and phobias that keep you from living your best life. Sallie has spent the majority of her law career in the corporate world in various industries. She currently provides broker and contract compliance services to real estate brokers and owns and operates a real estate school providing educational opportunities for real estate professionals, throughout Florida. Warrior Networking Masterminds, moderators, and leaders of this series have hundreds of years of success in all areas of business, and they have been and are servant leaders willing to create. Please join with us now as we welcome today's guest, Sallie Wagner.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. So, what if I were to tell you that during our time together, you're going to be richer, happier, better looking, have more time, all of those fabulous things. And you will have more time in life to experience all those wonderful things. Now I'm not telling you that's going to happen. And yet, imagine how you are going to feel when it does happen. Pretty amazing, right? So let's do a little experiment. Everybody take your right index finger, put it right here at your temple, and imagine how you are feeling when you're richer, happier, healthier, better looking, and more time to enjoy all those things. And as you imagine that, I want everybody to just take your finger away. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. So, you heard all about me, right? And you could learn all of those things about me if you checked out my social media and my websites and other sources. And here's something you won't learn about me from those sources. 18 years ago, on International Talk Like a Pirate Day, you can look it up and see when it is, my first husband died, and I killed him. Now, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say she did it, right? And yet I know it was me. I fell asleep. We were keeping watch and I fell asleep. And when you back up days before that, he tells me how tired he is. And I know what he's telling me. He's too tired to go on. And I tell him, it's okay. If you need to go, you can go. He asks if the kids will be okay, if I'll be okay. And I lie. I tell him, yes, we'll be okay. And I know that I killed him. If only I hadn't given him permission. If only I hadn't fallen asleep. If onlys. So, does anybody else have if onlys? Yeah. Do we all have if onlys in our lives? Does anybody believe I killed him?
No.
No. I don't either. Not now. And I did. For a long time, I carried that guilt and that grief with me. And it held me back from living my life. Now I know all that's not true. And that's the crux of it. it's not what you don't know that holds you back. It's what you do know that's not true that holds you back. Does anybody have those things? Right? Here's one. I have to be perfect. Does anybody else have that? I'm looking at the screen to see if anybody's going yes. No? Nobody? Oh, well, maybe I'm the only one.
No.
Yeah, and when we have those kinds of limiting beliefs about ourselves, they really hold us back from living our best lives, right? Because in my case, if I know I'm not going to be perfect at something, then I just won't do it. So you see how those kinds of beliefs hold us back. And again, it's not what you don't know that holds you back. It's what you do know that's not true. Does anybody have anything like that? Something that maybe you used to believe that's not true and it held you back in your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've all had those experiences, right? And so that's why we get to the 3 ideas of MSG: mindset, skill set, get off your asset. Because those things that we tell ourselves that are not true, that's all part of our mindset. And when we can change our mindset, when we can change the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, then we can have a different result in life, right? It all starts there. Now, mindset, there are lots of components to it. One part is perception. Who remembers or who has heard the story of the blind men and the elephant? Anybody here? Yeah. So they all experienced a different part of the elephant, right? Trunk, tail, tusks, and all the other parts. And so they defined it in a different way. Now, the truth is they were all right. And they were also all wrong because their perception was incomplete. The story they were telling themselves was incomplete. And guess what? Our perception is always incomplete. And that's what's going to either move you forward or hold you back, depending upon what you tell yourself about yourself. Pretty interesting stuff, right? Many times, though, we need a new skill set to get the right mindset. So that's the S part of MSG, a new skill set. And when you think about skills, we want to think about having complementary skills, multiple complementary skills that really enhance each other, right? And we do this in our careers, in our businesses, where we have complementary skills. We can do it in life as well. An important skill to have is communication skills so that we can be more successful at our networking like you're doing here today. Another important skill is setting goals, right? Really important skill is setting goals, because if we don't know what the goal is, how do we know when we get there, right? 3 quick tips for setting goals: make it big, ask questions, and be specific. We've all heard Richard Branson and other people say, make it big, right? So you want to make sure that your goals are big enough. That means we need to ask questions. Asking questions is so important. You want to ask questions like, why is a particular thing important to you? Is it because somebody told you it should be important? Going back to all of those things that we believe that are not true, right? Or is it because you truly believe that it's worthy of your effort? Another thing is we want to be specific in our goals. If you don't specify, the universe is going to fill in the blanks and you may not get the results you intend. Has anybody experienced that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've heard that saying, be careful what you ask for because you may get it. We've all heard the joke about the guy who wishes for $1 million and then suddenly he's surrounded by deer, right? So you want to be very specific about what you're setting in your goals. So that's, and lots more guidelines for goal setting, right? The next step is you got to put it into action. Otherwise, it's just philosophy, right? It's just a picture on that vision board and it's in the corner gathering dust. We got to put it into action. And that's where there's a lot of a disconnect for us. So that's really what we want to work on today. How do we get into action? So 3 easy steps to get into action. First of all, you want to write it down. And that sounds so simple. We think it can't possibly work, and yet it does. Studies show that when we write our goals down, we have a 56% chance of success. Now, our next step is to have an accountability partner. We want to share that goal with somebody. Any guesses on why we don't share our goals?
I can give you a guess.
Okay, yeah.
It's basically fear.
Sure.
We don't
Right.
want to be judged for not achieving the goal, which again goes back to your mindset issue,
Mindset.
because your mindset is such that that's what I call head trash. Basically, you're in there, you've already assumed you're not going to succeed,
Right.
or at least you're
Yeah.
communicating to your zombie brain that this is something to be afraid of and avoided. And so if you're not willing to share it, then you've got to work on the M, before you get into the action, because your actions are not going to succeed, right? Because you don't believe it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to tell anybody I'm on a diet, because what if I don't lose that weight I want to lose? Or what if I don't go on that vacation I've been thinking about? We don't want to fail in other people's eyes. It's like, okay, well, if I fail, it's only I'm the only one who knows, right? If I don't tell anybody. So we're like these secret agents. We have all these missions for ourselves, but we don't tell anybody about it. So we don't share. And yet the studies show when we share it and we come up with daily action steps to move us in the direction of the goal, we increase our chances of success to 64%. So it's well worth the risk, I think, right? And then the third step to get into action is report your progress. This is like the accountability partner again. You want to report your progress every week. We can't hold ourselves accountable because we're too soft on ourselves, right? Oh, it's okay, I'll get to it later. Or it didn't really matter anyway, right? We come up with all those reasons for ourselves. And yet that other person, that accountability partner, can help us to be accountable. When we do that, we increase our chances of success to 76%. That's pretty cool, right? Who doesn't want that? And yet, statistics show that we're not really very good at taking those action steps to get into action. I mean, this is almost the end of January. Studies show that people who set resolutions, the longest that most people keep them is February 1st. So a few more days, and if anybody has any resolutions, most of them are going to be gone by then. Most of them are already long gone. A common dropping off date is January 19th. The success rate for resolutions is about 8%, 92% failure rate. And yet, when we put those 3 simple steps into place, we go from a 92% failure rate to a 76% success rate with 3 simple steps to do, right? And yet it's that fear. It's that start that stops most people. It's the fear and it's the regret, right? That keeps us living in the past, that keeps us from moving into that fabulous future that we imagine for ourselves, where we're happier, healthier, longer lived, all of those things, right? So how can we harness the energy of that fear and regret? How can we transmute it into something that we can really use to move us forward in the direction we choose? So who has regrets in life? Who has ever experienced regret in life? All of those if onlys, right? So here's a question to ask yourself, and maybe this is where we can find that impetus to move forward. Imagine in a year or 2 or 3, and you're looking back on today, this very moment. What do you think you will wish you had done? right? What will you regret not doing? So it's kind of that fear of regret in the future, right? Instead of being fearful now and having regret pull me into the past, like regretting that I fell asleep, regretting that I feel like I gave my husband permission, right? Instead of living in the past, how can I use that to move forward and pull me into that fabulous future I'm creating? So here's how we can do it. We transmute that fear and that regret into resilience. Resilience is a fabulous topic nowadays. Probably everybody's heard about it. Resilience really gives us that strength and that courage to move forward. And we can build resilience in 4 areas of life: physical, emotional, mental, and social. And we're going to go through a couple of little exercises to do that. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, Sallie, one of the things I would like to do before we jump into that, since
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of at a break point here,
Okay.
is or not a break point, but just so we can kind of engage
Yeah.
the folks here. So listening to the steps that she has in getting into action and reflecting on the mindset, there's a lot of things that she's put out there for us to kind of process. Is there anybody that, and again, I know this is, you guys are, I've told her you're very engaged, so now don't prove me wrong. But is there anybody here that has a thought or has any kind of things? I've shared some of the chat messages. I know Maury has posted some things, observations about that we have, but any area there that she's hit on so far that is giving you pause or challenge or recognition of things? I've got a number of them, but I want to hear you guys. Alan, go ahead. Alan Diamond, you open your mic. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's recognition. I started to establish some really good habits many years ago when I first joined New York Life, in terms of what the sales process would be in prospecting. And COVID kind of knocked me off the track there. And I really have to focus on going back to those basic principles. So write it down. And I used to write things down in a written calendar, and I've gotten sloppy now that I'm using the CRM system. I just don't update things very much.
No, that's actually a great, Alan, thank you. And by the way, Alan, you want to go ahead and quickly introduce yourself, since you weren't on when we went around, just so that Sallie knows who you are and what you're focused on.
Okay, sure. I'm a financial advisor with New York Life and NyLife Securities, and I help folks build protection plans for themselves, their businesses, and their families.
Fabulous.
Awesome. Randy, you had something? Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that along those lines, there's a couple of people who I visited who their planning process consists of a series of charts that go the entire length of the conference room wall. And that's their planning. And it is so finite and so detailed. And there's 2 things about that. Number one is there's no accountability because they didn't assign anybody to anything. And then there's no accountability because they don't really know where to start, and how to adjust and how to account for issues. So I guess the simple thing is, and I guess it was Alan that just said it, just write it down. Just pick one. Start with one.
Yeah.
And say, you know what? I'm going to get up 10 minutes earlier tomorrow. Okay, what do you got to do? Set your alarm 10 minutes earlier. And by God, you'll get up 10 minutes. So you'll wake up. Now you got to do the really tough part. Get up. Okay. It's like that with all the goals. Okay. You can have goals. You can set goals. But if you don't do them, make a solid, honest attempt, you're not going to get there. I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Okay, Buddy.
I'd like to add one more thing if I can.
Okay, go ahead, Alan. Then I'm going to call. Then, Buddy, I'll come to you.
Yeah, sorry, it'll be quick. Goals
That's okay.
have to be measurable. If you can't measure your completion, then why bother?
Amen.
Buddy, you want to unmute?
Yeah, I'm unmuted,
Okay, go
David.
ahead.
The most important thing when I'm teaching mentors or other coaches about exactly this concept, the most important thing is to be a pilgrim. If you can't see it and feel it and touch it, in other words, if it isn't written down somewhere and you're not being held accountable, you're not going to focus on it and you're not going to do it. So achievement requires the three components. Number one, put it somewhere, share it with somebody, and then make sure somebody's that pilgrim who's in your ear or in your head so you feel accountable to them as well as yourself. That's always been my best trigger point.
Yeah, for those that have been in this group for a while, back in 2017, I did a talk when we were still in the room. And I talked about my vision for the upcoming year and kind of the areas. And again, it's holistic, right? It's not just your business. It's not just everything, right? Sallie and I have talked about this. It's not everything. But I said at that point in time, I have an aspiration or a goal to get back my 6-pack abs. And I said that in a room to Sallie's point about getting it out there. And I went into a process that kicked off a process that has led me to losing 70 pounds, getting off of all medications, and increasing or decreasing my metabolic age by about 16 years. So sometimes it's to kind of connect Randy's point to what Sallie was saying. It doesn't have to be everything. I mean, you can look at things and then just pick the one. Sometimes, we used to in the organization that, when I was large corporate, and Sallie came from there as well. You start off with things to build momentum that you can get done. So pick something that gets you moving forward. As we always say, warriors move forward.
And then achieve it.
Right. Well, hit it, measure it, have status on it, right? I mean, achieving it, again, it can bring all kinds of fears because if, let's say I set up the goal, I mean, it took me 18 months. I didn't lose 70 pounds overnight. We don't have the commitment to these things, right? So you've got to realize, but every pound I lost, every drug I got off of, every day I woke up feeling better, those were things that I shared. I reported out. I said, my progress is this. Somebody said, well, you've lost weight. Well, I know that's a simple example, but it's the same thing in every aspect, right? I mean, this is what Sallie's teaching us, right?
Yeah. And that's, all of these are such important points. It doesn't happen instantaneously as much as we would want it to, right? It is a process, and the system and the process are what are more important really than the goals. You need to have that system and process of daily action steps, small steps that you can actually do every day. And that's where the success is, moving in the right direction every day. If you wait to experience success until you've achieved the goal, then by inference, you're living in a constant state of failure, right? And how does that feel? Not so good. And yet when we focus on the daily action steps, we are living in a constant state of success.
That's awesome. Any other comments? And by the way, if you think of something as she's going through it and you don't want to interrupt her flow, just post that thought in the chat and I'll pop it up there. So that's another way we can improve the experience for those that are maybe watching us in the audience on live or on replay. So feel free. You guys all out. This is why this is a mastermind. Sallie's leading us, but everybody here has value to add. That's what we're trying to do. So, okay, Sallie, it's back to you. And
okay. Yes. Well, thank you. That was fabulous. And it seems like we're all on the same path, right? We're all with the right mindset here. I was going to talk about resilience, and resilience is really MSG put into practice, because it allows us to build the mindset, the skill set, and take action in 4 major areas of life. And that's physical, emotional, mental, and social. So first of all is physical. That's obviously your physical well-being. And there are some easy ways that we can build physical resilience. I mean, this is your body's ability to bounce back from injury and illness and stress and all of those things that we're faced with pretty much constantly, right? So the first thing is get into action physically. And again, the small steps, you're not going to start out on day 1 and climb Mount Everest. You're not going to run the marathon on day 1. However, maybe you walk to the mailbox on day 1. Maybe you walk to the end of the street on day 1. Whatever it is, wherever you are, take the step and take the next step from there. Get into physical action. The next thing is you want to nourish your body with good food and drink and nutrition, right? And this is going to be different for every single person. I have a daughter-in-law who has celiac, so gluten is out for her. My daughter is vegan. I have sensitivities to gluten and dairy, and so it's going to be different for everybody. So make sure you understand your needs for your body. The next thing is we want to avoid substances that are harmful. Again, that's going to be specific to you. Maybe it's caffeine, maybe it's the dairy, maybe it's whatever it is, substances. It's not always about alcohol and drugs, right? We also want to avoid binge restrict behaviors. Again, not always about eating and drinking. It might be that streaming service that we all love and the show that we get sucked into, and suddenly we're in season 3 and we only intended to watch 1 episode, right? It happens. So those are easy ways. Now, here's something that I'd like us to do together. Everybody to your comfort level, and if you can do it safely. I know someone was driving before. So is everybody game to do a little exercise together?
Sure.
Okay. So I want you to make your hands into fists and hold them up to your comfort level. Just like this. It can be high over your head, whatever you want to do. We're going to count down from 5 together. Everybody ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You just built a bit of physical resilience. It's that simple. And you increased your focus and your determination so that you can achieve all of those big specific goals that you've been forming for yourself, right? That is physical resilience. Now, the next is emotional resilience. This is our emotional intelligence, our perception, our empathy, all of those fabulous things. Now, typically, I would ask people, look at your phone, search for your favorite baby animal, and then everybody looks at their phone and they go, oh, we won't take the time to do that. You can do it on your own. Research shows that when we see pictures of baby animals, or especially the baby animals in person, we experience those soft, touchy-feely emotions like love, right? So fabulous way to build your emotional resilience. And again, this is good for our mindset. It helps us build all those wonderful skill sets. This is why I say it's MSG put into practice. Now, our next area for resilience is mental resilience. So this is our ability to think logically, to come up with alternatives, to come up with systems and processes and action steps to achieve a goal. This is all sounding like skill set and mindset, right? The things that we've been talking about. So another activity, is everybody good?
Yep.
Okay. We're going to snap our fingers together 50 times, and you can count it out in your head. You don't have to count it out aloud, although you can if you want to. Just remember to breathe. So is everybody ready? Let's do it. Okay, I got to 50. I did everybody make it to 50?
No.
Yep.
Not yet.
Okay.
I only got to 25.
Okay.
That's because I'm
Okay.
only using one hand.
Gotcha. Okay. So tell me when you're done. Is everybody good now?
Yes.
Okay. So guess what? You increased your focus, your determination, your willpower, so that you have all those things to call upon when you're working on those daily action steps to meet your fabulous goals. And you just built a bit of mental resilience. It all goes back to MSG. Our last area for resilience is social resilience. Now, this is our ability to ask for and receive help and give help to people in our community. And this could be family, friends, neighbors, our community at large. This is what connects us to other people, right? So one way that you can do this is the next opportunity you have, shake hands with somebody. And as you shake hands with them, say thank you. Now, studies show that when we shake hands with people, our brains release oxytocin, which is the trust building hormone, among other things. And as you deepen and strengthen that trust bond, you're more willing to help each other and protect each other. Makes sense, right? And when you say thank you or express gratitude, that is absolutely the number one way to build relationships. Now, here's a bonus. It's totally self-serving. Once you do that, that's an excellent time to talk about referral opportunities and networking and business building, right? Because you've already kind of softened each other up with a hit of oxytocin. So that is our resilience, putting MSG into practice. And there are other steps you can take to build resilience in each of these areas. These are just some very simple steps that you can take to get started, and you build from there, build it into your system and process of daily activity steps. Anybody resilience builder here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was speaking with somebody a couple of days ago, and she was telling her story of a 10-year journey. Over the past 10 years, she has lost over 400 pounds. Whoa. And her amazing transformation. And she was celebrating because her sister had lost over 250 pounds. So not that they were necessarily on the journey together, and yet they were celebrating together.
Is that cumulative or lost 10, gained 15?
No, this was like she lost it and kept it off.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know somebody who's lost 400 pounds 50 times. So
yeah.
No,
that's why I asked.
She lost it and kept it off. Yeah. And such an amazing story of triumph that she was sharing.
So who has any examples of building resilience? Is anybody here working on building resilience in any aspect of your social, mental, physical areas of your life that you'd like to share? Go ahead, Randy.
Since nobody else seems anxious to share their resilience, as David knows, I've lost 100 pounds over the last year.
Wow.
And I gained back a pound yesterday.
So your net is 99. So yeah, so right. You're failing today. You failed yesterday.
No, it's feedback. It's not. It's everything is an experiment, right? What happens if I do this? Oh, nice feedback.
Well, this is not an experiment. This is a lifestyle change for
Absolutely.
me. For me.
Yeah.
And I feel good about it.
As
I guess we should, right? Sure.
Yeah.
If you want the secret, I'll tell you.
Who else? Has surely? Okay, go ahead, Maury. Just unmute.
Yeah, thank you. It takes me a while. I'm not used to this format, so I have to figure out what the mic is. Anyway, I spent the first 40 years of my life wanting to be dead. And I
Excuse
tried
me?
to kill myself at least half a dozen times. Now I want to live forever, and I love life, even when stuff happens. You know.
Hey,
So
Nori, do you know Frank King?
no.
Okay, yeah, he has chronic suicidality, and he's known as
Ooh,
the um, uh, what is it? I'm trying to remember his shtick. He was a guest on my podcast, but yeah, he had his testimony on my podcast was he had a flat tire. To give you an example of where his head was at, and he's still this way. It's a hereditary. I don't know. It's some kind of a mindset thing. We talk about mindset, right? And he said, I had a flat tire the other day, and I had three choices. One was to call AAA. Two was to change the tire myself, and three was to kill myself. And those were as natural options to him and his mindset than anything else. So we kind of, people say I started out wanting to kill myself, but there's more of that going around than people realize. So it's definitely something to not just laugh off. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's only, there aren't enough resources for people. That's the whole thing. They need exercises like what we've been hearing today. Sally's been sharing information that doesn't cost anything for people. And just little things like that can change your focus. One of the things I tell people all the time is that it's really important to understand that nothing turns on and off like a light switch. So even though it feels like you suddenly got depressed or you suddenly got suicidal or you suddenly got in a bad mood, there's actually a whole series of things that happened before that would indicate to you, almost like red warning lights on the dashboard of your car, to tell you that this is coming. And if you learn to pay attention to these things, you can see those. It might be hard to stop the attack once it happens, but if you can learn to recognize the precursors, what happens first,
right,
then those are usually very easy to change. I tell people, keep a picture of something cute on you or on your phone, easily accessible, like a cat playing with a ball of wool or a baby cooing in a crib or something. And if that makes you smile, as soon as you recognize that first little hint of depression or that first little hint of anger or anything really, just use that as a signal to look at the picture, watch the video, whatever it is, and it'll change the direction of that energy flow. It'll get it right away from all the hell and towards happy instead. Anyway,
that's great, Maury. No, that's
Sally,
awesome.
Appreciate everything you've said and taught us. Thank you.
Go ahead, buddy. You opened your mic. I can hear you on the road.
Yeah, 90% of the people that I deal with are struggling with exactly what we're talking about here, resilience. And I circle everything back to my writing journey. When I wrote my first book, it took me 2 years because I was anchored in perfectionism, and nothing was ever good enough, and it was never going to get published. And then when someone tapped me upside the head and said, look, stop trying to be perfect, try to get through. Then I took the goal of writing the book and I broke it down into, I'm going to write 2,000 to 3,000 words a day. And my second book, when I wrote it in 30 days and it was 105,000 words. Mm-hmm. So this is a self-driven journey. You have to learn resilience before you can teach resilience. But, it's a struggle. There's always the monster in the closet. You have to keep going back to it and saying, no, you're not going to beat me today. I'm going to beat you. But it can be done. And I love what Sally's talking about.
Thank you. Yeah, I think
Thanks,
one of the mind traps that we get into, the limiting belief, is that you're either resilient or you're not, right? We look at people and we go, oh my gosh, they've got it all together. And yet we can learn the skills to be resilient and to become even more resilient than we are already.
Perfect. Sorry, Sally, that was good. Yeah. So back to you.
Okay, yeah, that was fabulous. I love this. So here's kind of a chicken and egg question. So it's probably like the $65 million question given the price of eggs lately, about which comes first. Is it resilience or is it time abundance? Because they really kind of feed on each other. And of course, we all know that it all feeds into MSG, right? So who has ever had the feeling that I don't have enough time? Time flies like, yeah, time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. All those kinds of things, gosh, I just wish time would slow down. There's not enough time to do all the things I need to do. We're living with that sense of time poverty. And is everybody okay if we learn 3 easy things to do to increase our sense of time abundance?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So we tend to remember things in threes. So I've had like multiple sets of threes throughout, 3 by 3, right? And studies show that one of the leading indicators of overall well-being is our sense of time abundance. It's not monetary abundance so much as it's time abundance. And studies show that our sense of time abundance really is unrelated to how much, quote, free time we actually have. There are lots of people who have lots of time and they're just bored and restless. Does anybody know anybody like that? One of I live in Florida. Sometimes people call it God's waiting room. Our next door neighbor, a couple of years ago, he's retired. He was like, oh my gosh, I'm just so bored. I don't know what to do. He has all the time in the world to do whatever he wants to do, and yet he doesn't know what to do. So he has all this time, and yet he's still not living with time abundance. So 3 easy ways we can increase our sense of time abundance. And the first thing to do is to increase our sense of personal power. Now, this breaks down into 3 steps, right? The first step is to, when you choose your seat, sit on a high seat. I'm sitting on a high seat. I typically sit on a high seat when I'm at my desk in front of my computer. Dining chairs are higher, right? Those kinds of things. When you do that, you automatically increase your sense of personal power. Now, the next thing you can do is, and we all have it, don't say you don't, our power pose. The one that we go to when we adopt our secret hero identity, right? The Xena warrior princess pose, or the Superman, or the whatever your secret hero identity is. We have that power pose. And when we adopt that power pose, we automatically increase our sense of personal power. And then the third way to increase your sense of personal power is to remember a time when you felt powerful. That's easy, right? Now, the things I'm talking about, they take no time at all, maybe a second, maybe a millisecond to remember that time of personal power, to go into my power pose, to choose a higher seat. Because so many times when I talk with people and I say, well, do this and do that, and they go, I'm so freaking busy. I can't possibly do one more thing, and you're asking me to do one more thing. These are things that take no time, right?
Right.
It's easy. So increase your sense of personal power. Now, the second step is, and this is going to sound like a paradox, counterintuitive, give your time away. When you give your time away, only 10 minutes, that's all it takes. The net benefit back to you is as if you had suddenly gotten 1 hour of free time. So we all want business, right? We all love it when we have appointments. And yet, I have to admit, maybe you'll admit too, there are times when somebody cancels and I'm relieved. I'm like, oh, thank goodness I have that time back, right? It's such a gift. It's like getting out of class early or something, it's just like, oh, I got more time. And yet we can feel that same sense of the gift of time by giving our time away. 10 minutes just to help somebody. It can be somebody at home, somebody in your neighborhood, somebody at work. Just give your time away. 10 minutes is all it takes, and the
Sallie,
benefits more than make up for it. Yes.
Can I inject, because that's such a powerful point, and I don't want people, because what you have here, and I don't, the giveaway I hadn't really thought of. I like the way you did that, because it's not something but we always talk about in our networking, in our warrior networking community, we talk about you should never waste your time. You should never spend your time, and you should never just take it for granted because it's your most valuable asset. I would argue with anybody who says time is one of your most valuable assets. No, it's your most valuable asset, because we've all only got 24 hours in a day, and when it's done, it's done. And so, but the other thing is giving your time away, connecting a dot. You use the term oxytocin. Understand that when you show up at a networking meeting or you show up on here today, you've given your time, you've invested, you've given it to us. You've shared your expertise. If nothing else, you've shared your presence and your encouragement, and you've triggered in me, and I know probably other people on here, if you think about it, you've triggered oxytocin. It makes me feel good about you. It makes me feel good about me. And it is a contribution to my emotional resilience, more so than money, by the way. It's not, I mean, I've made millions of dollars and given a lot of money away, but when somebody takes the time to call me, to invest in me, to serve me in any way, that means a lot more to me, and I think to most people, if you really think about it, than writing a check or doing something like that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I just wanted to amplify that because that's such a powerful point. Giving your time away is not something to be taken lightly, because you're giving the most valuable asset you have. Randy, go
Absolutely.
ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on that just for a second. David knows, and most of the folks in the group know, my business model as a consultant is I give my time away. I do not charge for helping people solve their particular business problems. I just feel it's what I owe the universe, because I've had a lot of good things happen to me. So if I can help other people have good things happen to them, more power.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Randy.
And that's all of this put into practice, right?
Right.
You're manifesting it in the landscape of your reality, and
Right.
that impacts so many people.
And it doesn't make me a hero. That's just the way I want to pay back.
Yeah. Yeah. You're living out your superhero identity by doing that. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. I like that.
Yeah. Take the credit for it. Right. So that's the second way we can increase our sense of time abundance. And you see how I'm saying it, increase your sense of time abundance. This is your perspective, which is mindset, right? It's all about mindset. The third way is to learn something new. You can learn a new word. I get emails that say, oh, it's the word of the day, right? Learn something new, try a new food, go someplace new, do something new. And you can do the same thing, a familiar thing, but do it in a different way. Our brains are highly efficient and lazy at the same time, right? Once they figure out a way to do something, they're just going to keep doing it in the same way because they like those familiar neural pathways. So what happens when we do that? We kind of go zombie mode, right? We zone out. We're on autopilot. Has anybody ever driven someplace and you get to your location and you're like, I don't remember how I got here. Yeah. Or this is one that happens to me sometimes. I'll admit it. I'm toweling off after a shower, and then I go, did I shampoo? I can't remember. My hair's wet. I must have, but I don't remember actually doing it, right? Because we're doing something that we've done so many times before. We just zone out. We're on autopilot. We're not in that fully awake, aware state anymore.
Part of the aging process.
Perhaps.
Well, actually, yeah. I was going to say it's not part of the aging process, Randy. It's you're actually genetically built to save processing power by just creating that muscle memory, and you just got more age behind you. So
there you go.
You've got more zombie brain development than most. So.
There you go.
Thanks, David.
And when we do that, time flies like that, right?
Right.
I get in my car, I start driving, boom, I'm there. I'm like, how did that happen, right? I lose that time. It's kind of like an amnesia event, right? It's not that I forgot, it's that I forgot, and suddenly I'm there. if we want to, when we want to, I should say, slow down that perception of time, do something new or do the same thing in a different way. Because if you do the same thing in a different way, your brain is going to have to take a different pathway to get there, right? So, if, for example, if I brush my hair with my non-dominant hand, I'm right-handed, so I'm brushing my hair with my left hand. Or instead of taking the familiar way to get to my appointment, I take a different way. So I'm more alert, I'm paying better attention, right? Do something familiar in a different way, and you slow that perception of time. You increase your sense of time abundance. Now, we all have the same 1,440 minutes in the day. I haven't given you any more minutes. I have given you ways that you can change your perception of how those 1,440 minutes go. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
So how about if I told you that all of this will actually potentially increase your lifespan? So you've not only changed your perception of the time you have actually potentially gained up to 10 more years in your lifespan. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Sure.
Pretty magic, right? Studies show, and studies are worth, whatever you think of them, most of them are bogus. And yet studies show that when we build resilience, when we put MSG into practice, when we increase our sense of time abundance, we can potentially increase our lifespan up to 10 years. When we change our mindset with all of these things, we have a more positive mindset. Negative mindset, low frequency mindset is related to inflammatory disease. And studies show, science shows that the telomeres, so who knows telomeres? They're the caps on your strands of DNA, right? Like the caps on the ends of shoestrings, and they keep the strands from unraveling when your cells replicate. When your cells replicate, if your telomeres are short, then your cells will replicate suboptimally and you have defects and you're more prone to inflammatory diseases. And we're learning that most everything is inflammatory disease, right? When you have a different, more positive mindset, your telomeres actually lengthen, which means that when your cells replicate, they're likely to replicate in a more optimal fashion, which means that you are less likely to experience those types of defects in the cell replication, and you're less inclined towards inflammatory disease. So, fabulous result. You have a better life in quality, a richer life in quality, and a longer life in years. Sound pretty good?
Sounds like a plan to me.
Okay, so one last thing. Everybody, right index finger to your temple, right hair. Fire off that anchor that you installed as you envision and imagine that fabulous life as you are happier, healthier, richer, better looking, and take your finger away. Congratulations, you have done it.
I get everything except the better looking.
I think you look fabulous and you look better than when we started.
That's awesome. Well, let's give Sallie a hand. Thank you, Sallie, for
Thank you.
sharing with us. As always, how can we serve you? If you if you want, you can share in the chat your link, and I will feature it. But if there's a link for us to, I know there is because you gave it to me. It'll actually be on the show notes for this replay. But go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to share a link to an ebook. And this is an accompaniment to an anthology book that came out in December. I'm a contributing author. And it talks about a process of developing an overall life strategy that is supported by those big specific goals that are in turn supported by those daily action steps. And I'd love to offer it to people. I'd love to offer a complimentary session for EFT, NLP, give it a test drive and see where it gets you.
So if you guys haven't figured it out, that what I just featured or featured that chat, it's just like it's live. It's a live link. So
Right.
if you are clicking on it, it will open up that browse in another tab on your browser. At least that's the way it should work.
Yep.
So you can click on
Transformation, your
that.
strategy for life.
Yeah, and you can go back to that later. I always recommend doing that regardless of what platform you're on, is click the live links, open them up so you can, it makes it easier to go back to it, and enables you to follow through on the intention that you have while you're listening to what she's saying. And as we always talk about on the Mastermind, and Sallie, you gave us a lot of great things to think about, a lot of things that maybe we already knew, but you know what? Knowing it isn't important. It's back to the G. I love the G. Get off your assets. Get in motion. Every time I talk to a client and they tell me they're anxious or they're stressed or they're not getting what they want, it all goes back to, okay, what is it that you're in motion on? What are you doing? And most of the time they're in their head. They're not moving forward. They're not in their warrior brain. They're in their zombie brain, and either they don't know what's going on and they're just not paying attention, or they're wrapped around the axle with some kind of fear or concern or procrastination, which is usually rooted in perfection and other things. But anyway, any other thoughts before we get into announcements or anything anybody